Everybody, how's it going? I have been startled by the amount of animal rights activists who are blatantly unaware of the AETA Act, or the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, and they have no clue what it is. They are completely oblivious to it, and they, unless someone informs them of it, remain completely oblivious to the law. And it amazes me how an animal rights activist, even if you're an above ground activist or an underground activist, to not know about this law is very negligent on your part, because this law essentially says that any form of animal rights activism could be deemed as terrorism if certain agencies like the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, the ATF, the Anti-Terrorism Task Force, or etc., or local, state, or federal authorities deem it so. And that is open to the authorities' interpretation of the law itself. So, I want to go over why everybody should oppose the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act. First off, it is excessively broad and very vague. The Act defines an animal enterprise as broadly to include any enterprise that uses or sells animals or products. It also covers any person or entity having a connection with an animal enterprise. This combination includes virtually every enterprise and corporation. The Act does not specify that the interference be conducted with the purpose of protecting animals, so it applies to any form of advocacy. Moreover, the Act punishes and pushes mere attempts at interference, as well mere communication with individuals who attempt such. The next result is that almost any interference can be deemed as simply as sending an email across state lines that calls for a protest of a soft drink company that sponsors a rodeo. Animal enterprise includes virtually every retail business in the United States. Nearly every retailer sells animal products for profit. That includes grocery stores, meat, dairy products, shoe stores, leather shoes, clothing stores, wool, sweaters, restaurants, meat, dairy products. That means anti-pornography activists who target adult bookstores selling leather attire may be terrorists, which sadly would fall within the lines of the AETA Act. They make a great point. And this information is coming from the Equal Justice Alliance. I'll stick a link down below. You need to favorite this website, because if you are an activist and you hear a on your door someday, this information will gladly help you out in the long run. The other issue is that it brands civil disobedience as terrorism and imposes severe penalties. The Act provides several penalties for non-violent illegal acts like civil disobedience, which has been the most effective tactic of the civil rights and other social justice movements. Civil rights activists who cross state lines to sit at a white-only lunch counter could have been branded terrorists and charged under the Act. Acts of civil disobedience, non-threatening, non-aggressive acts of civil disobedience under this Act, you could be charged as a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, a threat to national security. You and Osama bin Laden would be in the same category. Only you're an activist and he has been responsible for killing, if not hundreds of millions of fucking people. But according to the eyes of the state and to the government, you're all the same person. You're all in one category. The other issue is it has chilling effects on all forms of protest by endangering free speech and assembly. This is why I hate this bill. This act, this piece of legislation, this law in this nation imposes and restricts freedom of assembly and the right to free speech and the right to a peaceful protest. Here goes. The prospect of costly fines and long prison terms is likely to deter many social justice and life affirming activists from engaging in protest activities, because most of their target enterprises fall within the Act's broad definition. For example, students protesting low wages of high tuition at the university could be charged under the Act, as the university is an academic enterprise that uses animals for education, research, and testing. That's how vague this law is that if you protest a college and they receive funding through the state or through the federal government for animal testing research facilities, you could be charged with interfering with animal enterprise. You could be charged as a domestic terrorist, even though you weren't protesting the abuse of the animals, you were just protesting the college, but the college has connections to animal enterprise, so in turn, you're a terrorist. That's how vague this piece of legislation is written. And it's law now. This law, people, is a detriment and is a threat to your civil liberties and your protected rights as Americans. This law infringes on the freedom of assembly, freedom of press, freedom of speech, the right to association, and many other rights that are protected, that we are allowed to have, that we are given as American citizens of this country. But this law trumps our civil liberties in the name of terrorism and the war on terrorism, which is a war of bullshit. If you're an activist, an animal rights activist or not, you need to know about this law. You need to educate yourself about this law, because this law directly affects animal rights activists and liberationists, but in actuality is a threat to all activists, because the terms are so vague and broad that this could include anyone, really. It is time that we question whether laws like this are the real threat. Are laws like the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act the actual threat to national security and to our freedoms and civil liberties? My answer is yes. This law imposes a police state. It restricts freedoms. It strips you of your civil liberties and your rights as an American citizen. This gives the government the right to classify you as a terrorist simply for being an activist in the United States of America if you're involved in animal rights activism. PETA is considered a terrorist organization under this act. Fucking PETA, the most liberal, nonchalant fuck group on the planet under the AETA Act and how they classify it, could be seen as a terrorist organization. That's how vague this law is, and that's the problem. We need to, especially if you are involved in, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian or you're an animal rights activist, it is our fucking right and our duties, one of them anyway, is to educate the public on the threats of laws like the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act. We need to educate people on the fact that the FBI, the Anti-Terrorism Task Force, the ATF, and other federal agencies are using this law to not only go after animal rights activists, but activists in general across the state. This law is a threat to animal rights activists, above ground or underground, like I said, but it is also a threat to every single activist in the U.S., regardless of what you may be doing. Take care. Goodbye.